Are we waiting for something to happen?
Oh, yeah. Should I just go?
I mean, I'm happy to just chill out for the first minute.
Top posts of the week. So.
All right. I'm going in. In at 3, we've got a slightly tricky post. Former Labour MP Mike Amesbury, you may have seen, has been sentenced to actual prison, which is incredibly rare for an MP, because normally when MPs do the wrong thing, they just get, told off or whatever. But he's actually, right now, as we're recording, he is locked up in prison. The reason is because he punched somebody to the ground, and when the person was on the ground, he kept punching them. So that's suboptimal. Right? And it's all on CCTV. Yeah. You can watch it. If you hit YouTube, it's there for you. Anyway, he's in prison. And being in prison, he still gets paid his salary, which is like 91 grand a year. And there was a few people who are cross about that. But people who are cross don't understand what it is to be an MP. Your boss is the electorate. Nobody employs you. You have been elected to your job. The Prime Minister can't fire you as an MP. The Speaker can't fire you as an MP. Nobody can fire you as an MP. They can stop you being a Labour MP, which they have done to Mike Amesbury. He's not an MP anymore, a Labour MP, but they cannot stop you being an MP. You have been put there by the people. Even when he's in prison, he's been elected by the people. Now, there is a newish thing called a recall petition, and that can be put in place, and the people can vote, and if 10% of all the electorate sign it, then he gets done, and there's a by-election. The only time they've always gone through, except for once for like Ian Paisley Jr. in Northern Ireland, because his constituents love him so much that even when he's being caught doing a total wrong, and they're like, oh yeah, no, it doesn't matter. Did
it happen? There was a recent one with the lady who broke the COVID rules, wasn't there? The Scottish one. I think that went to a recall. Maybe I could be wrong.
So to go to a recall, you have to be suspended from the House of Commons for more than a week, or maybe 10 days. I'm not sure. So that's the rule. Yeah. But Amesbury is appealing. He pleaded guilty, but he's appealing his sentence. And we can't have a recall petition apparently till after the appeal process. So justice has to be done, right? So after the appeal process, then he can have a recall, and then he can stop getting paid. But until that time, unless he resigns, I suppose.
That's the thing. Why isn't he not just resigning?
Because he's a scumbag. He's a scumbag on £91,000 a year. He punches people when they're down. He is the worst of the worst. And you can tell that because he hasn't resigned. Like, he's more than welcome to resign, apologise, and then run in that by-election and say to the people, I still want to be your MP. I made this mistake. But that's not what he's doing. No. He's appealing. He's not resigning. He's trying to fight it. Like,
it's not a good look, though, because, well, this is the stuff, we try and talk about all the time, right? We try and say, like, politicians in general, MPs in general, are decent people doing decent things. And this, when you get an outlier like this, it just makes it incredibly difficult.
But there are 650 of them. Right? If you take a group of 650 people, some of them are going to be scumbags. That's human nature. And also there's something about like what makes you be in it. Like there's a performance element, and there's all kinds of things that make it possibly more likely that some of the people who get up there to be an MP are these people. And you just get these scandals time and time again. And what hurts me most is that scandals are reported so widely, and the good work of, let's say, select committees is reported so littly that people who aren't particularly paying attention, I think that's most people, see scandal after scandal after scandal, and they don't see the good work, and it puts people off, and it's miserable.
Post number 2 of the week, okay? It's a big topic. It's defence spending, and this has been Wow, the thing of the week, really, hasn't it? It came
Number two
thing of the week, but really everywhere else it's been number one. But Keir Starmer himself actually delivered this message, okay, because it needed to come from him. This is policy, this is government, this is big. This is a big deal for the country. There has been so much recently about how, given the global instability, given challenges that we're facing, given increased cybercrime, given the developing situation with Russia and Ukraine, how we need to spend more on defence. And that's not just the government saying that. The Lib Dems backed that. They were calling for massive increases in defence. The Conservatives wanted increases in defence. Reform did. Lots and lots of people wanted an increase in defence spending. So Keir Starmer stood up and said, and, it's not immediate, but he said, we're going to get to this target of spending 2.5% of GDP. That won't mean a lot to most people, but it basically is we're going to spend loads more on defence by 2027.
Possibly 6 billion.
Possibly
6 billion, possibly 13 billion, depending on who you ask in the government at what time they're going to tell you.
Yeah, exactly. But what was really crucial and what made this a bigger story is he was clear and transparent about where that was going to be funded or how that was going to be funded. And it was by cutting the international aid or development budget. Okay. So that made this an even bigger story because we could see where the money was coming from. And that, okay, you've got on one side of things, you've got people like we put up a quote from Jeremy Corbyn that went huge yesterday because he's one of the people that's opposed to this. And the rationale on that side would be that this development, this aid budget actually helps stability in many countries. So the reason why there aren't more wars and more things going on is because we invest and help some countries be more stable. And then on the opposing side, you've got everybody saying, well, this is unprecedented, almost like a wartime situation. We're in unprecedented times. This is what we need to do. And there's a lot of debate on the page as well about how investment is a deterrent. Investment in military is also a deterrent. So they're the two sides of the argument we keep hearing this week. And it's a real split on the page. It's a real split.
Do you know, the last time we actually got to 2.5% on defence, the last time we did that, Tony Blair.
Really?
Tony Blair, when during the war in Iraq, because obviously when you're invading people, you spend more on it. And Labour prime ministers and defence, and it's counterintuitive.
It is. It really is.
But yeah, I mean, Tony Blair came in after years of conservatism, smashed in defence spending. Keir Starmer's come in after years of conservatism, smashed in defence spending. So it's counterintuitive, but the evidence is clearly there.
The other thing is, though, we can't ignore that globally there's pressure to do this, right? So there's pressure on Europe to spend more on defence, with America potentially withdrawing some of the money from NATO, etc.
But how is America raising money at the moment? It's cutting aid. The world's richest man is cutting aid to the world's poorest people, right? And then a few days later, David Lammy said it was the wrong thing to do. Our foreign secretary said that was the wrong thing to do. And a few days later, Keir Starmer's standing up and cutting aid. Like, there is so much that we echo what's going on in the White House. 2.5% was in the manifesto.
Yes, but not as early.
There was no date attached, I don't think. So that means within the Parliament, which is within 5 years, so by 2029. And he's made it 2027. Cutting financial aid was not in the manifesto.
No, it wasn't. No. In fact, the view was that we would eventually increase again, get up to 0.7 eventually.
Yeah, because it was 0.7 in the 70s. And then it was only a few years ago it got downgraded to 0.5. And Andrew Mitchell is Conservative, who's in charge of these things. He's a good man, Andrew Mitchell. He was like not very pleased with it. But yeah, the Conservatives were like, times are really tough. We've got to cut it to 0.5. And we're now cutting it again to 0.3. So that's a huge, over 50% cut of what it was just a few years ago. Yes, from one bleak moment to another bleak moment. Welcome to the top post of the week, lovely people. Here we go. In at 1. Children are miserable.
Oh.
Basically, children aren't playing. You know, playing out is the phrase, but they're not playing on the streets, and they're not playing in playgrounds because playgrounds are shutting down. You know, councils can't afford to keep repairing things and whatever. So playgrounds are closing. No one plays on the street because parents are obviously don't like that anymore because it's not seen as safe. I don't know if it actually was safer back in the day, you know, in the 80s when we were all out on the streets playing. They just, you know, I don't think it was any safer, but we're all much more aware of these things. And every time we see a story in the newspapers about isolated incidents, it feels like it might happen on your street. So it's completely understandably, no one's playing on the street. But if no one's playing in the street and no one's playing in the playgrounds, where are they going to play? Maybe at school, but then break times at school have come shorter. I taught at a school that had a half-hour lunch break because when it was 45 minutes, there were fights. So their solution wasn't to try and stop the children fighting. Their solution was to just have time to eat. So we've got no play at school. We've got no play in playgrounds. We've got no play on the streets. We've got this no ball games culture that says you can't even hang out in your estate and kick a football about. And do you know what it doesn't solve? The no ball games culture. It doesn't solve antisocial behaviour. It doesn't solve shoplifting. It doesn't solve the type of young people, that's a mean thing to say, but it doesn't solve young people terrorising older people like me. It doesn't. No, it doesn't stop that. It doesn't,
because if you're literally like the type of kids who are going to put down some jumpers for goalposts and have a football match, then that's great. You're not hiding in an alleyway vaping or doing whatever else. Do you know what I mean? So it's just so counterintuitive not to let people kick a football. Yeah.
And we're talking a lot this week about social media for young people. Like, they're not allowed to play, but they are allowed on their phones. So how's that helping?
The thing is, though, this is one where I don't think it has to cost an awful lot for an intervention. I know that maintenance of parks, etc., is tricky, but you know, as long as there is a bit of space, or even looking at more play opportunities. I don't know. I know it's so difficult to throw stuff back to schools as well because they are taking on so much.
So much.
Yeah.
But like I like it. But again, it becomes a thing where deprived young people have less chance to do it. Like I live in a sleepy town by the sea. There's like 6 playgrounds, right? All open, and there's a few fields they can run around in. And you've got the whole beach access for playing, right? If you live in the areas where I used to teach when I was in London, there's no, like, the play equipment on the estates is broken. There's no ball games rules. And so the opportunity to learn through play outside of school is taken away. And people they just have their phones, I guess. You know, and they get bored and fights start and so it is something that exacerbates the gap between the people who have stuff and the people who don't. And that's the gap. That's the levelling up. That's the opportunity for all that 14 years of Conservative MPs, Prime Ministers have been saying they want, and now Keir Starmer says he wants. But we're not. We haven't managed to do it, partly because it's really hard. It's really hard. You cannot transform a huge estate in London into Whitstable. You can't do that. You're never going to give them a whole beach to run around in. There's never going to be fields like we've got here to run around in. So we have to, no ball games culture. We have to work out how we can make it more child friendly in the areas that are struggling.